Property management. As you know, when we left, we were talking about rent and security deposits. I missed out on one thing that I wanted to mention when I got back here, and that was make sure, as we talked about earlier, you're planning for rent increases in your lease. I think that's very important. The lease should state if you plan on renewing, you are going to pay 3% or 4% or whatever it is higher during the next lease term. Also, payment periods. I just want to mention this. Did you know that most people get paid every 2 weeks? You probably do know that. And because of that, some people like to pay their rent every 2 weeks. Let's just say that we've got rent that's $600 for the month. If I switch the screens here, let's see if I do that again here. There we go. Anyway. Oh, this isn't on, John. Duh. All right. 1 second. Let that pop up. Maybe it's not plugged in, John. It seems to be on. Anyway, I'll explain it nevertheless. If you've got $600 in rent a month, if you pay that times 12 months, that's how much money? $7,200. But if you tell one of your tenants, hey, I'll let you pay rent every 2 weeks, and that's $300 for every 2 weeks, there's 26 two-week periods in a year. 26 times 300 is $7,800 in rent. So by changing the payment periods, sometimes you can earn 13 months of rent in 12 months. So that might be something you want to try. You like that? A baker's dozen. Yes, people do that quite a bit. I would say 20% of the time they choose to pay their rent every 2 weeks. I do have people that tell me, hey, I'm paying more for this over the year time. And I said, well, you know, that's probably true, but you know, we have to go to the bank twice now. We've got to, you know, sign the checks. Oh, okay. So it turns up being a service fee, you see. Okay, good question. By the way, we do have to have the questions and statements at the mic. I forgot about that. So we want to make sure we get that in. Let's talk continually about rent and security deposits. Please, again, check with your local laws, state and municipality. You're going to have to make sure that you are adhering to state law with respect to security deposits and what you're doing with that. And on the rents, some areas of the country do have rent control, notably California and New York, although there's a little bit of that in Chicago. So again, I would just check to make sure that you're not violating anything there. Identify the amount based on your area. Again, we do that by doing a market rent survey, checking to see what our competition is charging and what type of amenities they are offering. Also, with your security deposit, I would recommend keeping those funds separate or even keeping them on a separate set of books. Why? Well, if you need to give that security deposit back or a portion thereof, you know that you can go to an account and that money will always be there. You don't have to worry about, you know, keeping that involved with your regular income and expenses that come in. So find a way to be organized with that. I think it would be smart. Also, work with move-in and move-out forms. What does this mean? Well, when a tenant moves in a property, you're going to have a move-in form. And what this form is a form that has every room in the apartment or every room in the house, and it's going to have a checklist next to it. Carpeting or flooring, windows, lighting, light switches, doors. And the tenant is going to be responsible for checking anything in that room that needs to be repaired or replaced. If they go through the whole house or go through the whole apartment unit and they don't check anything, they're saying that that apartment is in good working order with no issues. Upon move out, you're going to bring that same move in, move out form out, and you'll notice that that same form is going to say no issues. However, when that tenant moves out, there's a hole in the wall, the light doesn't work in the kitchen, and something else. Okay, you can compare that move out form to the the condition when they moved out to the condition when they moved in, and that's evidence that you're going to be using to subtract that money from their security deposit. Does this make sense for everybody? Okay. All right. Avoid non-refundable deposits. We talked about that a little bit earlier today. It's one thing to take a damaged deposit when you're moving in, but when I'm talking about non-refundable deposits, these are things like storage or pet deposits. I like them to be paid monthly. Instead of $200 one time, I'd like it to be paid $200 per month extra. Question? I missed that. Let's make sure that's on. If there's a button on the top side of that, that should be green. If you could just check that for me. Yeah, press and hold it down.
Can you? Okay,
Yeah, there we go.
that's better. The question was, is there rules regarding the security deposit, what you can do with it or not?
Yeah, I just talked about that. It's based on what state you're investing in. Certain states have specific rules on what you're going to be able to do with that security deposit and what you're not going to be able to do. Some states require you to put it in an escrow account that earns interest. That interest has to be paid back to that tenant. Other states require just an escrow account. Yet other states don't care what you do with that security deposit, or I shouldn't say that. They don't have specific rules on what to do. You should be keeping that organized and separate anyway, but there's no specific rules with that. So check with your state laws with that. Okay? Good question. Yes?
Yeah, just before I ask my question, in Florida, with my property manager, I actually had to submit all of the security deposits in individual payments. I couldn't even combine them. Each one had to go in. But my question is related to the pet deposit. So one of the deposits I got, which was a non-refundable deposit, I got it from the seller, was a non-refundable deposit for a pet, which I was amazed that she gave it to me as part of the closing, because I would have thought she would have just kept it. But John, why, if you're dealing with the issue of competitive rents, so let's say you've got your rent competitive with everybody else, if you add on to that, then your rent starts to look uncompetitive. But if you do it as a deposit, it's kind of, okay, they see your rent's just like everybody else, and, oh, we have to pay this extra deposit. Can you explain your rationale?
Yeah, there's no doubt. You've got to analyze the capacity at which you can keep tacking on to the rents. There's no doubt about it, because eventually your market becomes saturated with a highest amount that you can charge for rent. You won't be able to go over that amount. You're going to have tenants start to leave. So again, I would consider studying that and finding out about what that is. If your top end of your market is 850, and by adding all these things on, you're at 900, you either have to do a very good job of explaining that, or you're going to have to cut that down a little bit and go to a different system. Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the reason I'm so adamant about all of you doing a market rent survey. I think that's important for you to do on an ongoing basis. Okay, check out your competition. Avoid setting the deposits the same as the rent amounts. I like this habit to get into. And the reason is because if your rent is $750 and your security deposit is $750, a lot of tenants take that security, or the $750 security deposit, and use it as last month's rent. So I would like to make that a different number, like $850 or $800 or something like that, but maybe even nomenclature's a deal here. Instead of calling it security deposit, call it a damage deposit or something along those lines. Increasing security deposits. I get this question a lot as well. Unless there's a state law that says otherwise, Let's say that you've got a tenant that continually pays their rent late and it's costing you money. Could you raise their security deposit? Absolutely you can. Remember, any decision that you base on acceptance of a tenant, how much to charge in rent, how much to charge for security deposit, as long as you're basing that on financial criteria and no other criteria, you're good to go. So you can raise security deposits with trouble or problem tenants. Deposits on storage, we talked about that a little bit. Again, I like the, not the one-time deposit, but an ongoing monthly deposit. Of course, again, you got to check with your saturation of your rents and just make sure that you're below that. I kind of want to talk about vacancies. That's a big issue, and it's a really big issue when your market is struggling for occupancy. So when you have greater vacancy than normal. I don't know which one, if it was yesterday or today, but I think the property manager or the agent that came in, one of the two, said that when they came into this market, the occupancy rate was like 84 or 85%, and now it's in the mid-90s. Do you remember them saying that? Okay. That's a big to-do. Vacancies are a big to-do when you've got a market that's working against you. It's like a plane flying into massive headwinds. Today, we don't have that problem because of such a rental demand that's in place today. So vacancies are a little bit easier to get grasp of today. But again, I think you need to look at the history. Find out what's going on in the marketplace. Today, there's no reason, if you've got an apartment building that is maintained adequately enough to market standards, why you should not have a tenant in those units. Like I said, occupancy rate is approaching the mid-90s. For college students, I think it was 98, 99% from what 512 was saying. So again, there's no reasons to have a lot of vacancies in this market. One of the things that you should be looking for, or almost fishing for as far as prey, if we went back to that shark, goldfish criteria, is I would be looking for apartment buildings with poor occupancy in today's market. Why? Because it's an indication of poor property management. Again, there's no reason why you shouldn't have good, strong occupancy levels. And if that's an indication of poor property management, just by switching the management, raising that occupancy up 10 points or so, you can do phenomenally well with cash flow and with value of that building. So you may want to look at that. I also think that you need to make sure that the management is not ignoring maintenance requests. Because one of the things that will create turnover is if they can't get items in their apartment or in the house fixed. You want to make sure that those items are getting tended to on a fairly quick basis. I would say for all things considered, if you can respond and get something fixed within 48 hours, you're doing pretty well. That's a good rule of thumb to work off of. If you have high turnover, it might be an indication that market rents are too high. You might want to adjust that. The reverse is true. If you've got 100% occupancy and it's been like that for a long time, that could be an indication of rents being too low. So please make sure that your rents are adjusted to what the market is. I think it's smart. Has there been in the past a lack of property management? If there has been, tenants typically will move from that situation. If there are tenants in there, then they're not paying rent. There's two types of occupancy that we should be considerate of. I want you to write this down. Number one is physical occupancy. How many people are in the units? Like I said, in this market, we should be approaching 93, 94, 95%, excluding college housing. We also want to know what the economic occupancy is. So if the physical occupancy is 93% and the economic occupancy is 90% or 91%, that kind of gives you a picture of how well the people are paying rent that live in that unit. That's a good statistic to know. Let's talk about how we fill vacant units. Of course, there's all kinds of things from curb appeal, advertisements, immediate communication with new tenants about you being the new management or new owner perhaps. You might be telling them, hey, we're going to be doing a lot to the property. If you know somebody that is looking to rent a place, we'll pay you or a commission or a reduced rent type of thing. Depending on the state, again, they may have some issue with that. Direct mail, government programs like HUD.gov. I get a lot of people that ask me questions about subsidized housing. A great resource for that is to go to the HUD.gov website or go to the local housing authority. Like here would be the, I'm not sure exactly, but I think it's the Austin Housing Authority, or sometimes it's run by the county, but that's the sites that you want to check out for that. And I would immediately focus on items that drive emotion. Renters rent on emotion. So just like you would be preparing a house to sell with curb appeal and kitchens and bathrooms and things that drive emotion, I would do the same exact thing for your rentals. If it's a single family house, make sure there's curb appeal there. Make sure the kitchens are clean and bright and functional. Same thing with the bathrooms.